Welcome to episode 2 in our breastfeeding series with Amberley Harris. In today's episode, we discuss the importance of the magical breast crawl and how to facilitate it, reasonable timeframes to expect it to happen, and to ask hospital staff to allow you the space for this to happen. We'll also discuss breast crawl after a C-section and the importance of skin to skin and building up oxytocin after a major surgery. And we'll talk about Amberley's personal experience with a VBAC and a C-section and whether she noticed any difference in her breastfeeding journeys after such different birth experiences. Enjoy! I saw an amazing video on this, and I actually think they did play it in the hospital classes, and I think it was a relatively new thing. But it was a totally new concept to me. I didn't quite believe it, to be honest, until I saw it. I was like, but babies can't move, they can't crawl. So can you explain to anyone who's never heard about this, what is the breast crawl?
Yeah, perfect. So as mammals, we have this ability to be born, to be placed on our mother's chest. Imagine like our fellow primates are very good at this as well. But really any other mammals in the mammalian kingdom, we have this ability for our instincts and mainly our senses. We use all of our senses to search and find the breast. And we actually are very capable of self-attaching if we are given the time to do it, if we give our babies the time to do it. So it's this amazing sequence. It's been studied very heavily, and all babies do the same thing, which is why it's really cool, and why if you can learn about it and see some breast crawls, what you're talking about, Laura, is perfect. If you can actually visually see what a baby does, it helps you sort of identify the stages, and then you can watch your own baby do it, and you know that it's all really normal. So the first stage is a baby when they're in the center of their mum's boobs that will salivate and they chew on their hands, and it's a way to sort of comfort and sort of center themselves and sort of get themselves ready for the next step. And then from there, they sort of go, and they literally crawl. They bring their knees up to their chest and they sort of leverage on their elbows, and they launch themselves from their mum's sternum down, all the way down, slowly, so that they're kind of in a horizontal position in line with their mum's boob. And then they work really hard at sort of using their hands to sort of, basically leverage again either side of the breast, and they bob their heads. There's a couple of very strong reflexes that they do then. There's the bobbing reflex, which is when they bob up and down, and then the rooting reflex when they shake their head from side to side, and they open their mouth many times and will try repeatedly, and eventually they'll just grab hold and go on and attach to the breast.
See, even though I've seen that, just hearing you say that still blows my mind. That a baby, and like it's obviously a survival instinct. They need to be born with the reflexes to be able to feed, because if no one's there to help you get on, you need to be able to survive. But that still blows my mind that they are able to do that, because can a newborn see, or are they doing that by smell? What's the predominant way that they find it?
So they can see, it's just not super clear, but the distance they can see really well is between a mother's breast to her face. That distance they're actually really good at, but anything further than that is just all kind of colour, and it's not super in focus for them, which is why the nipple and areola gets darker, and it helps them with that sense of sight. But the main sense that they're actually using is their sense of smell. They can smell. The nipple and areola is very glandular, and it secretes a substance which helps them find the breast. So we always have sort of been told that it's the milk, that babies, can smell the colostrum or the milk. It's actually more so that nipple and areola, that glandular tissue that's helping them out and helping them find their way. Yeah. But I think it is so cool. I think it's also to remember as well, in our current sort of maternity climate, there is a lot of reasons why babies don't do the breast crawl organically. So, things might be like if their mother has had like an induced labour, and maybe it's been a long labour and the baby is exhausted after the birth. Maybe it's been a really short labour and your baby is a bit in shock and is trying to sort of regulate their breathing first before they're going to be very motivated to breastfeed. Maybe you've had pain relief in labour that has got some opioids in it that is going to affect your baby's ability to open their mouth and coordinate the suck-swallow reflex. So there's lots of reasons why it's okay if your baby needs help with the breast crawl. They may do part of it, but then they might kind of get really tired and need to have a rest, and they sort of don't do the next step. And the other thing is it takes time. It takes a good hour, maybe longer, maybe shorter, maybe 30 minutes, but on average 30 to 60 minutes to do the breast crawl. So all I would recommend everyone do is sort of peg the time, sort of look at the time and note, okay, my baby was born at 10 a.m. That means if my little one hasn't attached by 11 a.m., then I'm going to ask the midwife for help. I'm going to ask someone to give me a hand. But if in the meantime, the midwife even though they mean well, if they come in and try and facilitate that attachment, it's so reasonable for you to say, actually, we would love to watch the breast crawl unfold. And if our baby doesn't get on within the hour, and if you've got a little bit more time, great. But generally, hospitals are trying to hurry this process up because it takes time. But yeah, my plan is always to, remind mothers that it's okay to ask for that time because it's so important. It's the first breastfeed puts like this imprint in a baby's mind as to how they're supposed to breastfeed going forward. And it doesn't mean that if it doesn't go well, it can't be, repaired, but it just means that it's sort of a less than ideal start. So if you can give your baby that time, it's going to go a long way.
And I can see, like you said, about there's time frames and it's not necessarily set up to support a breast crawl, but that's where it's really great if women can empower themselves with this knowledge. If they decide that's something that's really important to them, that they know then that this is a reasonable time frame to expect the baby to get on, so that they know what they're working with. Because I remember watching the breast crawl video and myself being like, oh, just pop baby on. Like I was getting really impatient. I was like, it's so close. just pop it on.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Yeah. When, out of interest, when you watched that video, was this with your second baby or with your first baby?
I feel like my memory's haze, but I feel like it was with my first.
Okay, yeah.
Before I had even started breastfeeding. So I do think it was my first experience of anything. It's not like I had a history or experience with breastfeeding, but I do remember finding myself being like, just help it. Come on. It's so like, because you know how it roots, a lot, right around the nipple. And obviously it's my personality just to want to, I'm like that with my children as well. I'm trying to foster independence, but sometimes I just want to go, let me help you.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think it's really good to know, because then you can just relax and go, you know what? There's no rush. There's an hour to do this. And is there like a time frame? So say after an hour, is your baby going to get hungry? Like what's the problem with waiting longer than an hour?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not so much that your baby gets hungry. It's more that babies after birth have a certain window that they're alert and interested in breastfeeding, and then they kind of reach a point where they need to have a nap. They have a really great sleep after the birth. It's like this recovery sleep. And so we've only got so long where we want to help your baby out to get on, if they haven't got on within the hour, or otherwise we might miss that perfect window. And then once your little one's gone to sleep, then really our option is just to express and give some colostrum in a syringe. So it's more to do with that, not that they're going to get super hungry, but yeah, you would like to feed them within a couple of hours of the birth. So that's really what that's about.
And what about the C-section mamas? So it's obviously a little bit trickier given that they've just had abdominal surgery, but is there any reason they can't do the breast crawl?
No, not at all. Exactly. It's a bit more uncomfortable. They can't sit upright, but the cool thing is the breast crawl, the best position for the breast crawl is on like a 45-degree angle. So cesarean mums are absolutely fine to get into that position, as long as they can feel comfortable. But yeah, they don't need to sit all the way upright. So it's totally fine, as long as they can, feel like they can at least have the bed put on an angle and they've got some good pain relief on board so that if they need to maneuver a little bit, they can. But yeah, totally fine to do this. And exactly, it's very important for all mums to do, especially mums who've had a cesarean, that they get given that time to establish their breastfeeding.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like that. And I was actually on a 45-degree angle after a cesarean anyway. I was never flat on my back. So I think it was a great position to probably try. Yeah. I feel like I might try a breast crawl if I have a third baby. This is sounding fascinating to me.
Do it.
I can see the hesitancy. Like my first reaction, maybe it's a people pleaser trait or something, but I think, oh God, it seems like a lot of hassle to have to ask everyone, blah, 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 blah. But then I don't know. I just really like your attitude. It's like, well, no, it's your baby. And if it's something that's important to you, I think there's no harm in asking. Like, if there's no medical reason why you can't wait, then why not? Like, I think we do have that culture of like, got to get it done now. We've got to try it now while I'm here watching you, you know, rush. But yeah, I like that window of an hour for women to know that, no, let's give it a chance and let's see how we go. But also to know that there is a plan B and that it doesn't, because I think, because a lot of women take things black and white. And I think it's also important to probably say here, if you don't have a breast crawl and if you don't have all these perfect things set up, it does not mean that you will not have a good breastfeeding relationship. So I didn't have a breast crawl and I had 2 Caesars and I had all the things that should work out. Exactly. And I had a wonderful breastfeeding relationship. So I think it's just like, this is the ideal and this is amazing if you can. But if it doesn't happen, don't freak out. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
Absolutely. So true. There's so much with breastfeeding. I think it's just about getting help along the way, and that if things do pop up that wasn't part of your plan, or you're like, okay, my baby isn't really attaching, it's like, okay, well, let's seek some help with that. How can we get that going? But a lot of mothers will contact me and say, look, I know I need to have a cesarean. I know it's not ideal for your breastfeeding, but what can I do to help? And it's like, that's okay. Like, you know, if you've got a medical reason that you need to have a cesarean, so fine. So, you know, your greatest ally, any mother who's going to have a cesarean and wants to really focus on how they can best set themselves up for success with breastfeeding, is using skin to skin. Skin to skin is your biggest ally with your breastfeed. So that means most of your breastfeeds, your baby's going to be in only a nappy and you're going to be bare from the waist up, and you're going to do that breast crawl and let your baby use all of their senses. You need your baby to, you know, really tap into those instincts, feel home, learn where home is. And it's good. Obviously, it's very important for everyone learning how to breastfeed. But mothers who've had a cesarean, it's just because we know statistically they're more likely to have separation between their baby. You know, maybe not. Maybe some hospitals are very forward thinking and they're doing skin to skin contact in theatre, like baby gets placed over the drape. But more often than not, most hospitals are still taking babies to the resuscitaire. They're drying them off, wrapping them up and bringing them to mum and putting them on their chest. And then it's not until mothers get into recovery that babies will have the blankets taken away and they'll be on mum's skin. So it's not a major deal. It might be half an hour of time, but it is a time that separation can impact that very first breastfeed. So that's why make up for lost time. Do as much skin to skin that you can in those first few days and weeks just to help your baby with that. And help your milk supply is the other thing. The other side of that with cesarean mamas is that it's the birth of the placenta which really triggers milk production. And so we know that with a vaginal birth, it's, you know, this cascade of hormones that peak, the baby's born, then there's the delivery of the placenta. And then hormonally our body knows the placenta's been born and it says, okay, I need to start making milk for this baby, and it triggers milk production. So with a cesarean, we just don't have that same hormonal experience. We still have it. It's just that the placenta just gets lifted out of the uterine cavity. And so we still get the messages. It's just a bit delayed, which is why milk production for mothers who have a cesarean can take a few more days compared to a vaginal birth. So, you know, none of these things are beyond repair. It just means that putting in some extra time with the skin to skin is going to really help you and your baby out with your breastfeeding.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's such a practical thing that you know you can do, even if birth doesn't go as you expected. And would that be the same for mothers who have had a natural delivery but for some reason have had separation, whether it be because they've needed help or Bubs has needed help? Same thing, lots of skin to skin, get that oxytocin pumping.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about skin to skin. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's a lot of effort. I've got to get this suit off. And, you know, most babies hate their clothes being taken off. And I get that it feels like more effort, but when you get your baby there, well, firstly, it feels amazing as a mother to have your baby on your skin. But I guess just remember what it's doing. Remember this amazing role that it's playing. Yeah.
And I wonder, just came to me then, if, say, you've had to go under general anaesthetic for a Caesar and you are going to be apart from your baby for a while, is it worthwhile your partner doing skin to skin? Like, will that sort of make up for it if mum can't do it herself?
Absolutely. Skin to skin is huge because touch is actually the first of all the senses to be developed, which means it's the most heightened. So it's going to be such a beautiful feeling for your baby. It's going to really create a lovely bond with you and your partner. So definitely, if mum can't do it, skin to skin with partners, or I actually recommend siblings do it as well as a really cool way to really connect with their little one, because it's just awesome. It's a huge thing for our babies to feel that sense of touch. It's just so good for them.
This is making me so clucky. The idea of having a newborn on my chest, like, it's such a fleeting moment in time, isn't it? It just goes by so fast. Just before we move on, we're going to talk about troubleshooting, but I was just thinking, if you're happy to answer personally, Amberley, I know you've had one C-section and you've had a natural delivery as well.
Yeah.
Did you notice any change in your milk supply when your milk came in? Any changes in your lactation at all between the two?
Not for me, probably because I had my cesarean first, and that was my first breastfeeding experience. And I was still breastfeeding my son when I had my daughter. I tandem fed them. So for me, I guess my milk came in really quickly, but probably more so because it was my second baby, not necessarily because I'd had a vaginal birth. So we know that with milk production, we lay down our milk ducts during pregnancy. So however much milk you made with your first baby, you're going to make more milk with your second, more milk with your third. And we know that with each baby, our milk comes in sooner. So probably my story was more just to do with the fact that I was having my second baby and I was still breastfeeding. So my milk came in really quickly. Not so much, I'm guessing, the difference in the type of births that I had. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. So anyone who's had a terrible first baby experience can expect that hopefully it might be a little bit simpler or more straightforward next time.
Absolutely. Okay. That's a really important message because that's probably the biggest cohort of mothers that I work with are mothers who've had a first breastfeeding journey that didn't go as they'd hoped, and then I work with them with subsequent babies, and that's why I really admire mothers that are motivated to work at it the next time, because honestly they have such great success with it, and it's just because they're prepared to accept that not every journey is the same. This can be different, and I'm going to really seek support, and I'm going to prepare myself the best way possible.
Yeah, that's so great. Not just accepting that if you've had one bad time, the rest are going. I see the same with prolapse or incontinence. Women who have had it with their first child just assume it will get worse. But what I find, again, knowledge is power. Once you actually have the education to manage these things, often I find women are so much better second time around just because they know. And same with breastfeeding. Once you know a little bit more about it and know what to expect and know how to troubleshoot and how to set yourself up, then it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same as the first time or worse. It's probably going to be better. So if you are pregnant and listening to this and you had a terrible experience first time, it's probably worth knowing that you can do something during your pregnancy to arm yourself with the knowledge needed to set yourself up for success. Thank you, Amberley. You're wonderful. Now, are you too now inspired to try a breast crawl for your next baby? Because I know I am. It sounds like such a beautiful, patient, and physiologically normal way to initiate breastfeeding. Now, I think it also goes without saying, if you don't get to experience a breast crawl, it does not mean you won't have a great breastfeeding relationship. So this podcast series is not to say that if you do X, you will breastfeed well, and if you do Y, you will not. So the world is not black and white. This is just giving you information to make informed choices. I personally have had 2 wonderful and long breastfeeding relationships, and I've had on paper all the things that shouldn't make that happen. C-section, separated from baby, no breast crawl, etc., etc. So I just wanted to mention that for anyone thinking that this is the only way, it is not. I'll catch you for episode 3, where we are chatting about breastfeeding troubleshooting when things don't quite go to plan. So we'll be covering mastitis, milk supply issues, and nipple pain and damage. I'll see you then.